Are you ready for part 2 of Bridges on the Camino? We've uncovered some great stories and very interesting information. Stick around. In part 1 of this series on bridges, we discovered some very interesting information about some of the bridges that you will encounter while walking the various caminos. There's so many of them that it's hard to just pick a couple of them, but here's a few more. You're probably going to find these interesting. The first bridge is the Romanesque bridge of Puente la Reina. Like so many of the villages along the caminos, this one was founded in the 12th century to provide for the pilgrims coming from France en route to Santiago. In the village of Puente la Reina, 2 caminos merge into one, the route from Roncesvalles and the Toulouse-Saint-Port route. As the pilgrims leave the village, they're faced with crossing the river Arga. In the 11th century, at the initiative of the Queen, a bridge was built. It's not documented exactly who the Queen was or if it was a wife of an important person, but they named the bridge Puente la Reina, which in the Basque language translates as Bridge of the Queen, hence the name of the village. The bridge has 7 semicircular arches, the most easterly of which is underground and is 110 meters long. Between the arches are some smaller arched openings that serve as vent holes, which lighten the structure and also allow the water to run through when the river rises. The bridge used to have 3 defensive towers, one at each end, and then a central one, which housed the Renaissance image of the Virgin del Puy, also known as the Chori. There's a legend associated with the statue that tells of the image being visited by a little bird, or a chori in the Basque language, which looked after it and groomed it, removing cobwebs with its wings and washing its face with water it collected from the river Arga. It's said that whenever the chori appeared, the bells were set ringing and people would stop work and celebrate. This statue of the Virgin Mary is no longer on the bridge. It was moved to the Church of San Pedro, close to the river, in 1843, but you can go see it there. This next bridge was recommended by my friends Timothy and Sharon, who live in Spain. If you're not familiar with their wonderful app, Camino Connections, here's the information. It is the best, the most up-to-date, the most user-friendly app that you can have on your phone for walking the Camino. So here's the recommendation. On the Camino Frances, just about 25 kilometers past Lyon, you will see a big bridge, a really, really big bridge. This bridge crosses the Orbigo River, and it's headed into the town of Hospital de Orbigo. The bridge was built in the 13th century of stone and is 200 meters long with 20 arches. Most of the bridge is on dry ground today because of a dam that blocks the river upstream. But the bridge survives because of the legend of Don Suero de Quinones. In brief, here's the story. In the 15th century, the knight Don Suero fell in love with Lady Leonor, who unfortunately did not return his affections. Don Suero displayed his heartbreak by fasting and donning an iron collar every Thursday to show himself a prisoner of love. But a weekly caller wasn't enough to get over the lady's rejection, so in 1434, Don Suero also announced that he would joust any knight brave enough to fight him on the long bridge of Hospital de Orbigo. He said that when he had won 300 competitions, he would remove the collar and be free of his affliction. This became known as the Tournament of the Honorable Passage. But Don Suero didn't actually intend to fight all 300 jousts himself. He was wealthy and made plans to hire others to don his jousting attire and fight in his place. The year all of this took place was 1434. It was a Jacobean holy year, so there were many nobles passing through the village. But not everyone wanted to fight. If they refused, they were required to throw a glove onto the ground at the entrance of the bridge and then find an alternative route across the river. Many of the knights hired to joust in Don Suero's place had been injured, but collectively they had broken over 200 lances. The king tired of this action in his kingdom and ordered the joust to cease and declared Don Suero the winner. They ceremoniously removed the knight's collar and sent him far, far away. Perhaps the busiest town on the Camino Frances is Sarria. The reason for this is because it's just over 100 kilometers from Santiago, the required distance to walk to qualify for a Compostela. Well, that's the reason it's crowded today, but historical documentation reveals that it was crowded in the medieval times. Here's the reason why. As you leave the town of Sarria, headed toward Potomarín, you have to cross the Rio Pequeño, which translates into English as small river. In the 15th century, a bridge was constructed at the site where there once had been a Roman bridge. This bridge is called the Ponte de Aspera, which translates to rough bridge. This foot traffic bridge consists of 4 arches built out of granite and a road that is paved with slate. Historical documentation reveals that there was often a line of people waiting their turn to cross the bridge. You may be wondering, why was there a line when the river was so small? Couldn't the people just go up or downstream and find another crossing? Here's the reason why you couldn't do that. The bridge was a pontazgo bridge, or a toll bridge. Historically, fees were charged to travelers and merchants in return for permission to cross. This fee was often reinforced by the Holy Roman Empire. If you paid the fee, not only were you allowed to cross, but you were also guaranteed safe passage across the bridge and onto the border of the end of that jurisdiction. If you chose to cross somewhere else, upstream, downstream, anywhere but the bridge, you were on your own and you would have no protection. The result of this fee point, or the toll bridge, was a backup of people waiting in the queue to pay their fee and cross the bridge. So even in medieval times, there were crowds of pilgrims and others in Sarria. I'd like to take a brief moment to ask you to please hit the like button if you're enjoying this video. I know we all get tired of hearing YouTubers ask you to do that, but it really does make a difference. Here's what it does. First of all, it boosts visibility. When people search using words like Camino, Pilgrim, or other words associated with walking a Camino, the channel with a higher volume of likes will be suggested first. Next, it lets YouTube know that videos like this interest you, and they'll recommend similar videos for you to watch. But most importantly, it lets me know that the content I'm presenting is enjoyable to you. So please, take a moment and hit the button. Thank you. Now then, let's get on to that last bridge for this video. This bridge is actually a fairly new bridge, having been built in the 1960s. But what makes this bridge so important is the story that goes with it. It's the Ponte Nova, or New Bridge, which takes you over the Rio Minho to the village of Porto-Marín. On the Caminos Frances, just about 20 miles after Sarria, you'll find this bridge. After you cross the bridge, climb up some steps, walk a couple of steep streets, you'll see it. A village with historical buildings, a town square, a church, pretty much like all the villages you've been seeing along your journey on the Camino Frances. But what you are seeing is definitely historical, but new to this location. It's a new old village. You see, in the 1960s, an event happened that would forever change the face of the village of Porto-Marín. The construction of the Belisar Reservoir downstream led to the damming of the Minho River, threatening the original village with submersion. This village, established in the Middle Ages beside a Roman bridge, faced a realistic crisis. So what did the people of the village do? They banded together and moved the entire village, brick by brick, to higher ground. The relocation of the village of Porto-Marín wasn't just a matter of moving a community. It was a united effort to preserve the historical soul of the people. Structures they rescued included the 12th century Romanesque church of San Juan de Porto-Marín and the Capella de San Pedro. This monumental effort not only saved these historic gems from the rising waters, but also resurrected the town's history and identity. When the waters are low, if you stand on the bridge, you can see the remaining structures of the village that were not moved. It's truly a remarkable sight. Time for music. The selection for this video comes from the 1995 movie Underground. The film's soundtrack was composed by Goran Bregovic. Here's the theme from the movie, Underground Tango.